Thank you, Laura, for that nice introduction. I want to say, first off, I met with Julie Braga a couple months ago, and she asked me if I would speak this evening. And I said, well, that's an honor that you asked me to do this, but I'm not so sure I'm the right person. I live here locally. I've been very lucky. Florida Today has followed my story pretty much from inception up to present. And I said, I'm afraid people would be a little bored. I know that girl's story, and she's telling me again. And Julie said, Lisa, nobody knows your story, and who reads Florida Today anyway? Okay, in fairness, Julie didn't say that. It was just a great joke. Okay. We love Florida Today. Okay, with that said, I know, that's why. It was totally a joke. It was a joke. Is anybody here from Florida Today right now? Okay, good. With that said, they are? Okay. Many, not all of you, know how I came to create the shower shirt product and why. It was created from a huge need after I was diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent mastectomy surgery. Though most of you wouldn't know that long before the shower shirt, I was a health and medical television reporter in the Orlando TV market with Channel 13, Local 6, and America's Health Network. Because of that history, I love the art of building stories. We're essentially a product of our experiences, both good and bad. Therefore, we're a product of our story. So I think it's only important that I tell you a little bit about my personal story long before the shower shirt story began. I want to also say I firmly believe there are instances in life that can be considered unimaginable, unexplainable, and unforgettable. I have 2 of those experiences thus far in my 49 years of life. I do want to preface that. I just turned 49 last week, so I'm barely 49, or I'm 48 in 372 days. Anyway, nevertheless, going back 15 years, I was 34 years old, and I had just gotten married. And that's a picture of my lovely mother and I. And my parents were very happy. Finally, at 34, they got rid of me. Unfortunately, sadly, that's the last time I saw my mother. She died in a car accident within 2 weeks of the time I got married. I'll never forget that day. It was a cold, cloudy Midwest winter day, and my mother pulled out in front of a student who was driving home to visit his parents for Christmas break. And his small car T-boned her very large SUV. She was ejected from the vehicle. It broke her collarbone, and she was dead on scene. She was 60 years old. She died on her birthday. I can tell you at 34 years old, I realized that life can change in the blink of an eye. More importantly, that, my friends, is an example of something that's unimaginable, unexplainable, and unforgettable. I was severely confused, obviously traumatized, and had an overwhelming feeling of helplessness and a loss of control, because I could do nothing over my mother's death or the accident that caused her death. I never felt that way again until 8 years later when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Once again, I felt traumatized. I was obviously in shock and had an overwhelming feeling of helplessness and a loss of control. The diagnosis was somewhat unimaginable. I was 41 years old and conceivably healthy. It was somewhat unexplainable, as I had no family history of any type of cancer. Not to mention, those words, "you have breast cancer," is unforgettable for many reasons. Within a week of that breast cancer diagnosis, I'd seen multiple physicians giving me multiple pieces of advice. My choices were essentially a lumpectomy, a less aggressive approach, a lumpectomy with chemo-based radiation, or the more aggressive approach, which was a bilateral mastectomy. I quickly knew I did not want this disease to affect my life any longer than it had to. And I knew if I had only gone with the less aggressive approach of a lumpectomy, I would always be concerned that the cancer would come back. And every morning I had to take that little pill titled tamoxifen would remind me I had breast cancer. So I was leaning much more towards the more aggressive, what I term as breast amputation at this point. In the meantime, what I was quickly learning is everyone has to do what is psychologically acceptable to them. What might be psychologically acceptable to one person is not always psychologically acceptable to another. You can have a dozen physicians and they can be telling you all the evidence-based medicine, but ultimately you have to take steps based on that breast cancer diagnosis in what is psychologically acceptable to you. I remember having a long conversation with my aunt who's here, Aunt Faye, the one that doesn't look a day over 50. And I was telling her that I was leaning much more towards breast amputation, that was what was kind of psychologically coming to mind. And I remember the look on her face. She was just like very serious and almost in a little bit of a shock mode. And she says, quote, "Lisa, I could never choose to have my breasts removed. They are a part of me." One more time, what was psychologically acceptable to Aunt Faye was not psychologically acceptable to me. And I remember saying, "Aunt Faye, you know, psychologically, I have to get rid of this diseased tissue. Psychologically, I've never really cared for my breast in the first place." And to be perfectly honest, psychologically, I'm much more emotionally connected to my hair than that of my breast. So if something's gonna go, it's gonna be the breasts every time. So within a couple of weeks, I'd gone through that bilateral mastectomy. Of course, I woke up in massive pain, 8 hours of surgery, anybody here that's gone through it. And when I got out of the hospital bed, I had these nice little surgical drains. How many I know Bonnie's familiar. How many here are familiar with these drains? Oh gosh, a lot. Congratulations, you guys. I mean, you're here. I should have said that in the beginning. These are post-surgical drains. I had 3 on each side. And so I'm, walking around like this. And I said, "Doctor, when can I take a shower?" He said, "Oh, you can't shower until those drains are removed." And I said, "Well, when will that be?" And he said, 2 to 3 weeks. And of course, the obvious question, why? He said, essentially what comes out of the drain, the tap, is not sterile. There's bacteria, pathogens in tap water. We drink filtered water every day for that reason. Essentially, with these drains being sutured into your armpit, if water were to get inside those sutures, it would increase your chances of an infection, a waterborne illness. And that could be devastating to the reconstruction process, so you can't shower. So I thought, okay, I'll go home and start looking for some kind of water-resistant product. It was amazing, nothing existed. I began calling other people, friends, acquaintances that had had breast cancer, some of the ones I talked to about the psychologically acceptable. And I said, "What did you do? How did you shower?" And they said, "Oh, put a trash bag on." And they said, "It doesn't work very well, but at least," I know she's laughing. I know, I know. If you've not gone through it, you don't understand. And it's only funny later. And so I said, "A trash bag." And she said, "Lisa, psychologically, you feel better because you get in the shower with a trash bag, but it doesn't work, but just try it." So I literally got in the shower with a trash bag. My Aunt Faye was there one time. And I'm sitting here. Of course, I still have my drains and the mic. Sorry, I'm beating you guys up. And I'm like this, and my drains are coming out of my body. And I kept thinking, women have been going through mastectomy surgery in this country alone for 75 years. I know that. I was a health and medical reporter. And I kept thinking, why isn't there a product to protect me? Of course, my next thought, how many men are in the audience? Besides my good friend Doc McGahee. Is he the only one? Oh, 2. 3, 4, sorry guys. So my next thought was, there's probably a bunch of men running those mastectomy garment companies. They don't understand the insatiable lust women have for showering, because some of them are kind of gross. They don't shower much. And so anyway, I was, sorry guys, I'm sure you showered today. So anyway, I couldn't believe it. So over the next few weeks, I was in and out of the shower many times with a trash bag. Over the next year, during the world of creating the shower shirt, I had multiple complications. I ended up with 2 hospital-acquired infections. I won't mention the hospital this evening. I had ended up with 7 surgeries and 4 months of hyperbaric treatment. I think the complications from my breast cancer kept me focused on the shower shirt project. Those surgeries, the doctor would say, "Lisa, you're going to have another surgery. You're going to have another drain." I'm like, that's okay. I have a prototype coming from the manufacturer. I'll be just fine. I'm creating a shower shirt product. So, this project became my cathartic project to keep me focused on something besides feeling sorry for myself. And every day I missed my mother, and I was so mad at her because she wasn't there to go through this with me. Though every day I felt her presence, I would hear this voice, Lisa, keep doing what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, laying in bed infected. Lisa, keep doing what you're doing. On those days when I was so depressed and had so much anxiety and was so fearful and so sick, I would hear that voice, Lisa, keep doing what you're doing. The fact of the matter is, that voice helped me focus on maintaining the strength and perseverance to keep this project moving forward. And the fact of what I just might gain in trying to help future breast cancer patients. The shower shirt process began in July 2009, essentially, just 10 days after I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And after a year and a half, we went on the market. We're now considered a Class 1 medical device, and we have a patent for design and method of use, and I know that patent number, 1,8161,513. And we have more than 70 retail distributors across the US, several HME, DME locations, home medical, durable medical, and we're in Walmart.com and Amazon. And breast cancer doesn't stop at the borders. We have shipped to England, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, Austria, Japan, Israel, Brazil, and recently the Seychelles Islands and Dubai. Now that I've explained a bit about my personal story, the reasoning behind the shower shirt, and the perseverance it took to bring the product to market, I'm often asked what I've learned. First and foremost, I've learned that I have friends, family, a husband, and colleagues that love me enough to put up with me during this process. Secondly, what I've learned, I believe I'm blessed beyond belief in what I believe to be a spiritual connection with my mom. Very lucky. Most importantly, the biggest thing I've learned is I've been in control all along. I was in control on that horrible day my mother died, just like I was in control on that day I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I may not have been in control of my unfortunate circumstances, but I was in control as to how I reacted to those circumstances and the subsequent steps I took to make sure those circumstances did not destroy my spirit, while also taking steps to produce some type of positive outcome and learning experience for my own well-being. A quick sidebar before I close. My husband and I were watching the movie The Help a while back. Are you guys, anybody in here familiar with The Help? Yeah, set in the 50s, Jackson, Mississippi. And towards the end of the movie, the mother and the daughter were speaking. And the mother said to her daughter, I think courage skipped a generation in my family, and I'm so proud of you that you had the courage to write this book. A few days later, I was on some kind of rampage about the shower shirt. I hated it, I quit, I don't like this child anymore because it's become somewhat of a child. And my husband sat there and he smiled, he says, you can't quit now, Lisa. And he began talking about this movie. And he said, Lisa, I'm proud of you, you have courage. And most people would not have the courage you've had in creating this product. Though I didn't know your mom, I believe she would be very proud of you, knowing you've had the courage to do what you've done. My first thought was, do I have the coolest husband ever to have said something like that? But the more I think about it, or the more I thought about it at the time, I was so lucky. You know what? Courage did not skip a generation in my family when it came to females. My grandmothers were strong, courageous, classy, Southern Christian women. My mother was angelically courageous. She would have had to have been to marry my dad. But with that said, I was always around strong women that taught me to be strong. So my message to you this evening is don't let courage skip a generation in your family. Lead by example. Teach strength and courage to those lovely daughters. That's essentially why we're here this evening. We're here to celebrate the strength and courage of many women who are now deemed women of excellence. Oh, thank you. Who said that? The bottom line, if I can start a company in bed with drains coming out of my body, infected, showering in a trash bag, essentially you guys can do anything you want. In closing, I never wanted breast cancer to define my life. I wanted it to only refine my life. Think about that during your next trial and tribulation. Think about, how can I make sure this issue doesn't define my life and only refine it? And how can I learn from this adversity, ultimately to help others? As Sir Winston Churchill so eloquently said, we make a living out of what we make, but ultimately we make a life out of what we give. Thank you.